while all of this carnage is going on, of course, Israel's objective is to attack civilians and to attack hospitals and schools. And their military objectives are very, very thin. And I think we're going to see in this next half an hour of videos what that looks like on the ground. And just to say, I organized these videos. All of these videos have happened since you last saw us. I'm not picking the best of the entire war. This is what's happened in the days since we last saw you.
in the
And
last week.
also, they're organized by location, in part because that's how the 𝐤𝐿 brigades fight. They're broken down like a military order into regional battalions, and those battalions fight on their terrain, in their areas, in the areas that they know. And so I think just for the historical record, it's important to say that we're following each of these battalions in their battles in the defense of Gaza. So maybe if you want to just show the map, Tamara, we talked about a lot of places. We've talked about a lot of places, location places in this tiny little place of Gaza, 25 miles long. We're going to start in the north, Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia, that you can see up at the top of the map. I'll just go through the map quickly for people who aren't as familiar with the terrain. So you have the north, Beit Lahia and Beit Hanun. Then you see that darkened area. That's all Gaza City. And there's fighting and battalions all throughout Gaza City, Sheikh Radwan and Tufa and Shujaiya. And then you see that open space. That open space is the farmland that Ali talked about. There's farmland along the eastern edge. In the middle camps, you see Barej there in the built-up area where you see the dark in the middle of the map, right in the skinny center. That's the middle camps that Haider was talking about. Those are the middle refugee camps. And because of the way that Israel has set up their occupation of the Gaza Strip since the 1950s, it was to cut these areas off. And so what they're doing right now is basically a battle plan that has existed in Israel for more than 70 years. When we saw that grid map of where the areas they're telling people to live, to move, that aren't safe areas, those are actually maps that Ariel Sharon used in the 1970s to police Gaza. You can see in the south there, Khan Yunis. What Haider was talking about Khan Yunis is that Gush Katif was the settlement that you can see all along the coast there. So Khan Yunis, an entire generation, 2 generations of people grew up in Khan Yunis looking at the sea, but never able to access it because of the settlements. And that's the reality of the Gaza Strip. So we're going to start in the north here with these first videos tomorrow. We're going to just show people, because the battle in the north, Israel says the battle in the north is over. They say that they've dismantled 𝐤𝐿 as a military framework, which is clearly just an absurd claim. Because what we're watching here is fighters literally on the next block observing Israeli soldiers on the ground in the northwest. The fighters clearly still have command and control in this area. And in the next part of this clip, you're going to see them. They're attacking that ground force there within 1 block. So we're talking street by street fighting. In this shot, 𝐤𝐿 is going to take us first person as if we're there through the streets of Beit Lahia. And you can see that the fighting force still exists. You can see them here signaling to each other, professional fighters, disciplined fighters. We're not even into the guerrilla part of the army at this point. We're seeing well-trained fighters creeping up here. You're going to see a tank around this corner. And he's calling and signaling to the fighters because the fighters have control of these streets. Although there's drones in the air, and tanks on the ground, the Israelis have nothing like control in this area. And so you're going to witness here an ambush of this tank where we have the spotter, the shooter, and the cameraman all being able to deploy to the same operation. And as we've seen, these information operations, having these camera crews operating on the ground with the fighters has given us a unique view into this fight. But as Abu Ubaidah and Abu Hamza, the 𝐓𝐶 𝐄𝐥𝐞 spokesperson, have said, obviously, what we're seeing on video is not all of the operations. All of the units don't have cameramen embedded with them. But we can see here, again, able to use the houses, able to use the destroyed buildings to target the armored vehicles in the north, and showing us evidence of the burning vehicles from these strikes. And this is the north where Israel says they've dismantled 𝐓𝐡𝐞 as a military framework, whatever that means, and that they're fighting pockets of resistance now. So they're trying to wrap up this war with no military objectives achieved. And that's in the north. And now we move on to the next one, Tamara, number 2 here. This is a tunnel ambush. We know that they have 𝐓𝐡𝐞 has hundreds of kilometers of tunnels that have to be combated. And we've heard the false story about them flooding it with water. We haven't heard anything about that in a month since they told us this story. But what we're looking here is we're looking at a CCTV camera footage of watching the Israeli Special Forces unit. This is a Yahalom unit, an anti-tunnels unit. And we're watching somebody here watching on a CCTV camera, talking to fighters above ground, preparing the ambush here. You can see the dogs moving through. The dog is part of the Special Forces dog. And the guy in the CCTV is controlling by telephone fighters above and below ground. He's saying, they're coming, they're coming. And they're setting this ambush properly above the ground. There's still fighters above the ground, what we're watching here, and fighters below ground. So there's fighters in 3 different places here. You're watching on CCTV, above ground, and below ground. Now we're watching from inside the tunnel. The commander's able to watch them dangle this camera down to try to see if they can go into this tunnel. Yesterday in the New York Times, the Israeli and American intelligence officials revised the amount of kilometers of tunnels that they believe. They've been saying that there's 500 kilometers of tunnels, and yesterday they're saying there's now 725. So they've added 50% of the tunnels. And what we're seeing here is this commander on CCTV footage telling his fighters where to go to set off an ambush in a tunnel. And this is just a small sampling of what would happen. Let's watch it around again. So we see the drone come in with the infantry unit. The drone is checking out to see if they can see anything. But because
that's an Israeli drone.
drone.
Yeah.
So they can see, the Israelis are coming in and seeing that they can't see anybody because they're being watched on CCTV footage with a closed line, a commander commanding his troops who are both above and below ground. So the drone's giving them footage outside to say that nobody's there. He says, leave the water tank lid open. He's setting up he says, set up the camouflage, create it like there's the lid is showing a bit. They're trying to get the exact luring of the troops. And they're saying now they've entered the room, now go downstairs. So the fighters are upstairs at that moment. And the commander on the CCTV footage is telling them, okay, move out of the room now. The soldiers are coming. So now they move from the above level to the fighters on the below ground level. And we're going to pause it here with 3, 6, 8 soldiers that they're showing right there that are going to be a part of this tunnel operation. This is them scoping out the tunnel.
That's an Israeli camera coming down?
The Israeli camera coming down, okay, being seen by the Palestinian camera. And he's saying, so leave, there's still people above ground at this point. That's the flashlight of the Israeli troops coming over to see if they can go down in this tunnel. And the commander above says, deal with them, do it. And you see the fighters emerge from the tunnel. And this is, I believe, what we're seeing here is the first time we have seen in this 3+ month war, shots in anger fired underground. So you're meeting the ambush under the ground and then detonating the tunnel. And this kind of an operation gives you, first of all, the understanding that the command and control of this group is clearly not collapsed. Whatever the opposite of that is having people at 3 different locations plotting your tunnel ambush. And you can see that no matter how much the Israelis spend on their gear, on their drones, no matter how many forces they're sending into these areas, basically 𝐤𝐿, with the most basic tools, a CCTV footage, a commander watching on a computer screen, is organizing his troops.
Do you think that commander is above ground or underground, John?
He's in a third location. He's in a third location. So I don't even know if he's on. He doesn't have to be on site there. As long as he's getting that video feed, we could be seeing something here where he has multiple video feeds. And then they're clearly communicating on a closed telephone line. So as these soldiers with all their jamming equipment and all their technology are coming in, the Palestinians are literally on the telephone commanding. Look at it. You can see the line there on his hand. They're literally on the telephone commanding their forces above ground and below ground to carry out this ambush. And this kind of footage,
good thing they didn't get rid of their landlines then, like the rest of us.
Yeah, well, they closed their landlines, and then the Israelis have tried for a decade to get into this system, and maybe there'll be more time on other shows to talk about a couple of those raids were spectacular counterintelligence operations by the 𝐤𝐿 brigades to prevent the Israelis from planting bugs in this closed network. And so we've seen the fruits of that throughout this war. We saw that footage from 𝐓𝐿𝐿𝐿, where we had the fighters coordinating multiple sides of the ambush on the telephone. So this closed line is above and below ground and clearly being used to great effect, whatever the opposite of collapsing your command and control
John,
is.
A question for you. At the end of that clip, you see the guys going down the tunnel and they're firing. Those are the Palestinian fighters, and then they presumably go back, and then you see smoke or dust coming in the tunnel, which suggests there was an explosion that presumably the Palestinians set off. Previously, you talked about the dangers of underground combat, particularly setting off an explosion in the context of a narrow underground tunnel where oxygen is limited, where probably the effects of an explosion would be amplified because basically you're like in a gun barrel. What are we seeing there? How is it possible to set off explosions in tunnels and only harm the Israelis and not harm the resistance fighters? I mean, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, size of the explosion, whether you're carrying out a catastrophic tunnel collapse operation or just blowing up that one entrance. But like I said, this is the first time that I believe that we've seen shots in anger underground, because even your guns, the acoustics of the guns are crazy. Everything that you know above ground doesn't work underground. So all of their systems don't work. And that's why these Yahalom units have been training to try to do this kind of operation. And if we were seeing Israeli military successes, we would see footage like this every day, because there's hundreds of kilometers of these tunnels and their own people are in these tunnels. So presumably they're attempting to find their people in these tunnels. And we haven't seen anything at all like that. This is the first one. And I'm showing you this one because it's the first one that we've seen of this way. Some of the ways that they can detonate, we know that they use a door system, that their doors are a very important part of the structure of the tunnels. So we saw in that footage, just from that was a CCTV camera footage underground, and we could see the fighters advance and then withdraw. So it's possible they're withdrawing back behind a door and then closing that door to seal off the blast. And that's something that they can do all throughout the network, because as the Israeli captives who were released told us, the network is a spider web. It's not straight lines. It's not a grid. And so they're able to close off these whole sectors by closing these steel doors, which are also blast-proof doors, which help keep the structure against these airstrikes from above, which is also why the airstrikes from above don't destroy this tunnel network. The Israelis know that. They said that before the war, that there's no way you can get at these tunnels that we know that are as deep as 80 and 100 meters. It's not even close to being affected by what's happening on the surface. So that detailed tunnel operation that we saw being coordinated from 3 different places is taking place somewhere that Israel is saying 𝐄𝐿 has been dismantled. Completely absurd claims.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.